Welcome, everyone. Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever in the world you are joining from. As you're entering the room, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, where you're coming from, anything you wish to share with everyone this morning. My name is Lara Geringer, and I'm the community manager for ShapingEDU. ShapingEDU is a community of dreamers, of doers, of drivers, all striving to shape the future of learning under the auspices of Arizona State University. This is an open group of thousands of K-20 and lifelong learning educators, including you, educators, learners, technologists, leaders, workers, industry partners, focused on creating better futures for living and learning. Today's session is part of the Student Voices Project. And this project aims to further learner-centered everything by amplifying student voice, amplifying student stories, learner stories, needs, insights, and empowering the education community with resources that we co-create with learners. And that includes the resource that we're going to be creating today. Before we dive into that, one quick announcement. We have just publicly announced our next large event. So we'll be hosting an unconference virtually in July, all about reshaping wicked problems. We'll be joining other educators and change makers at a remote inn haunted by wicked problems. And we hope to see you there. I'll put the link in the chat shortly. So without further ado, over to Trevor and Natalie to introduce themselves and get us started.
Hi, good morning. My name is Trevor, and I'm really happy to have you here this morning and to join us. And we're looking this morning to create a multi-page resource, a version of this document we'll be working on in a moment, and a shorter cheat sheet, a one-page PDF or infographic that can have about 10 to 15 ideas that a prof or students can take into their classroom in the next round. And I'm just really excited to see what we're going to do today for our work, both for your personal benefit, as well as for professors and students around the world. I'm expecting that as we share our experience and ideas, we'll be able to build on each other's ideas and go farther together. And I hope you'll leave inspired today with one or two ideas that you can take and try to transform your teaching and learning. And I'm just happy to be working with Nat on this and really looking forward to what we learn together and what this generates for the benefit of everyone who's involved. Nat, on to you.
Yeah, no, hello, everybody. I know many of you see my face, maybe not. So I am Natalie Miller. I'm probably one of the youngest ShapingEDU participants, but that's because I started as a student and I loved it so much I had to stay. But what am I doing? Who am I? I am, first of all, an advocate for open education. That's actually why we got into student voice. So I'm going to get into that a little bit. I currently am a DoD contractor, so I have a job. I'm not currently full-time employed in the education system, but I do want to be a teacher and I'm going to do that part-time. So that's exciting. And I just continue to participate in ShapingEDU because I will always be passionate about education. So what is OER? Where are we going with this? Why is OER her first title? I was one of the first students involved in creating workflows for OER in the nation, and I was super stoked about that. I worked on multiple different documents and such, but OER is the future of education. I truly believe that. And because OER is the idea that you're going to make materials in your classroom with your students or just openly, why are we paying for textbooks? Why are we, paying for classrooms or like having to pay for this knowledge that's sometimes openly available on the web? So we're really just getting into that, getting to the bones of that and just making education opening barriers, Libra, and just making everything as accessible as possible to every crowd. Because why doesn't anybody not deserve an education? So how does that link in with student voice? Well, with open, you can definitely get student voice incorporated because you can create materials with students. You can have students be involved in the creation of the classroom. And although this is sometimes a new idea for many individuals, because the traditional classroom is you make assessments, you make the lecture, you go and present it. Still a lot of work though. I don't discredit that at all. But your job could be easier if you sometimes incorporate the students. You have this whole working force right in front of you and they want to make a difference and they sometimes don't understand that they even have a voice. So this whole idea of student voice is to hopefully cultivate all ideas of like how we can get students involved and give them a voice and understand where they can drive their education and give more input on what they're doing in the classroom and not just complete things and check things off and do things for the class and then never remember it again. So I want to do a demo on our document. Well, let's go backwards. We have a Slido with some questions, and I just wanted to go over them with you guys to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about today. So let's get in the right mindset. I'm going to give it to Laura to get the Slido up. There we go. So if everybody can open that up and start responding to some of the questions, that would be really awesome. These are just some examples of what we're looking at for student voice. Also some examples of open pedagogy and open education. It's really hard for me to go in depth on either of those topics because we don't have a ton of time today. But if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to provide them in the chat, to give you some links. Our resource today actually has some links that I've referenced before that are open education. So please, please, please be sure to check those out and continue to use the resource. Wow, oh, this is exciting. I love seeing these numbers. Okay. So we see a lot of surveying. What I more mean by that too is we aren't just talking about the institution survey, not just the one that's given out at the end of the course to help like evaluate how the professor's progress is doing, but also just ones, you know, hosted by the professor themselves, like asking, what do you expect from this class? How can we alter our syllabus to be better? I mean, overall, I think those strategies would be awesome. I personally have not had a lot of classes like that, but I know every teaching, you know, institution is totally different. Student feedback significantly altered the trajectory of the course. So we're talking about through an assessment, through feedback. Have you ever been in a course that's been altered by the students? You know, we're like, hey, the tests are too easy, or like, who would really say that? We love EBC tests, right? But, or, you know, can we do more group projects? Or can I do my project on the scholarship prompt so then I can like win a scholarship and apply it to the class? I mean, there's a lot of different situations. Students creating longer lasting materials for the classroom. This is all about open education in my world. You can see that there's actually only 33% of people who are saying that that's happened. Oh, that makes me so sad, but it's growing. I'm hoping it's growing. That's the whole idea that, hey, why aren't students helping to rewrite their own textbook every quarter or semester? You know, we could be breaking it up by section. Students do their own research, cite their materials, and it's an open book. The whole world can use it. It'll be there forever. And it's always updated material. You could be using examples relevant to your geographical location or current time. What do we have here? So then students developed quiz exam questions. I'm going to be running the assessment breakout because there's going to be multiple breakouts. We'll go into that in a second. And this is the whole idea of like, why aren't students helping to contribute questions? You know, one of the biggest, I want to call it a pet peeve, but I understand why it happens on both ends, is when I find assessment questions that I took online. And that's a pet peeve because it means that the professor just kind of copied and pasted. I totally understand. It's hard to think about assessment questions. It takes a ton of time. But I like to also know that I'm getting not just a publisher's version of an assessment. And I want to know that the professor's really thinking about what we're doing and how we're applying it. Once again, personal. Students taught more than 3 lectures. I was in a class actually where students taught over half the lectures and we were each assigned it and we knew at the very first day what lecture we were going to teach. I loved that. I got to hear different voices, different teaching styles, but all the same material. It was really cool. And then design of a syllabus. You know, have we ever talked to students about how we break up our, like how much weight they want on assessments versus projects? You know, I personally am a project person and maybe you're like some more of the class is project versus assessment. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't do assessments, but at the same time, maybe the weight can be altered or maybe students want more on their assessments because they're not as crazy about the projects. You never know. Anywho, thank you all for participating in that. That was really neat. I'm going to steal the screen now and we're going to go to our document. Here we go. Share. So I want to walk you guys. So at the bottom of our document, which Laura, I believe, posted the link in the chat, we have our whole agenda for today. Overall, kind of interesting, but I'm going to take you up. So don't mind my random scrolling at the moment. I see plenty of you joining. Get dizzy. Okay. Now we're at the top of the document. Perfect. I'm going to put my cursor here in case anybody wants to find my icon and click on it. I think it's there. So we have evaluating student voice and choice at the course level. So we got 5 groups. We want you to, like, each of you to join the breakout room with that group. So breaking that down, we have leaders for each of the breakout rooms except for Choose Your Own Adventure. We do need a self-proclaimed leader for that group, just somebody to kind of guide the discussion. That doesn't mean like overpower the room, but just guide of where we're going. The Choose Your Own Adventure is where the wild things are. There can be anything, you know, just how can we get student voice out here? That could even be just outreach on campus. Who knows? But where the wild things are and needs some guidance. So if anybody really feels passionate about that or just kind of wants a challenge, go for it. We got course design, instructional strategies, course content, and assessment. So I'm going to be leading assessment. Course content, I believe, is going to be led by, yes, there we go.
Allison.
I can't see names. Anyhow, I'm freaking out a little bit. We're good. So we have leaders for each one. They'll be announced again in a moment. You know, wave your hand. So course content, instructional strategies, and course design are the other 2. We have Creative Commons license resource. So that just means that's going to be open after we're done with the content. We want people to share this. We want it to be out there. We want it to be easy and accessible and more. We want the thousands to come to it. Being a little dramatic, but you know, we don't want this to have any barriers, essentially. So we want to make sure that we're citing everything. We're not using like pictures or images or quotes that are copyrighted or that we can't share. We just want to be aware of that. And what we're creating, we're going to be collaboratively creating a multi-page resource, which will serve as a foundation for a shorter cheat sheet. So at the end of this document in our working session, we want to create a 1 to 2 page cheat sheet. So professors don't have to read 20 pages. 20 pages is awesome to reference, but it's going to be more of a reference document. So we're not going to make it like a narrative. We're going to make it like a paragraph here and there about each topic. And that's kind of covers number 2 as well. Anywho, is everybody ready to get started? So when we get started, your breakout room will end up in a place like this. We have instructions, we have guiding questions, just to kind of inspire your ideas. It's not made to, you have to answer these questions. We just I thought it'd be great to have a place to start. And then this is current ideas and case studies. This is the kind of content we started with. So if you want to see some examples or where we're at already or what's been mentioned, then you should definitely read through this. And right below it, all this white space, that's your playground. That's where we want you to go wild, add ideas, even if it's just a couple words or a couple paragraphs. There's no real formal way to add content. But anywho, I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we should get started.
Okay, and I'm just going to, in case there's some of you who just joined now, again, the goals for today is what can we do at the course level to facilitate and strengthen student voice and choice. And the goal of it is to create a multi-page resource with your collective wisdom, and hoping that even as you share, that there's going to be that building upon that happens, and that wisdom that's going to really, be beneficial for everybody, as well as taking that large resource and making it into a 1-page PDF infographic that can be something where, someone who's got 5 minutes can just look at it and it's like, aha, I can take these 2 ideas and next semester I can implement them. And there's going to be maybe some links in there if they want to see some more details. So we're really looking forward to what you're come up with today with the ideas you contribute. Again, thank you for joining us today, and see you after the breakout sessions.
Okay, so I just opened up all the breakout rooms, and many of you, depending on your version of Zoom, should have the ability to go in and choose which room you want to participate in. If you have trouble getting into a room, just throw in the chat which room you want to be in, and I will go ahead and move you over there. We're going to stay in breakout rooms for 20 to 30 minutes, have some great deep conversations with each other, brainstorm some ideas, and then regroup to share out with everyone. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. As you're getting settled back in this main room, friendly reminder to add your name to the authors list on our document. This is a collaboratively created resource that I hope reflects all of your voices, and we want to be sure your name is there. Well, it looked like we had some great conversations in breakout rooms. Trevor, Natalie, how do you feel about a quick report out from each of the groups?
Let's do it. I know I gave mine a second ago, but I can do it again at the end if Trevor wants to go really quick.
Yeah, I mean, we were really talking about the various ways that you can have competencies and how to build those through the course and then within courses, like between courses. So, Ruben was just talking about when you have those key courses and those key ideas, and it's only through one course, then how do you break that into various courses where you have that choice? We talked about the challenges when you have a variety of assignments, but then how do you assess those? So you're like, we want to give you choice, but then with all that choice, it becomes for the professor, like, well, how am I going to actually do the assessment for that to make it fair between students? But came up with some ideas there. We talked about, building different courses on various platforms, like using YouTube or Instagram or things like that, and just looking at that, how you enter into the course is, determines where you start and what you need to do for finishing it. So various entry levels and exit levels for each course. So unless anybody else, and if anyone else in a group wants to share, please speak up. Nat?
Okay, how about Allison? How was your group? Your breakout?
Group was fantastic. And so I'll offer a quick summary, and then anyone that wants to jump in, jump on in. But we started off, because we were a smaller group. We added people on a little slowly. And so our first topic of conversation was, why is course content and student choice and voice so taboo? Like, why is it so protected? We treat our content so sacred, but there's so much of it out there. There's no lack of it. And so using students and getting their feedback on what works, what doesn't, what lands, what doesn't, can help to inform, the development and selection of, which stays and which goes, what sparks joy and what doesn't. And from there, we kind of went into, what does need to be held consistent so that we're keeping these standards, but also what can we let go of our control of? And so one of those elements is, how students express what they've learned, kind of dabbling our toes into the assessment pool, and what mediums and technologies they use to do that, and how we can give them that choice. And that frees from the stress of, oh, now I have to learn this, this tech platform. If they're making that selection, they get to take ownership of that. And it also helps us know how to stay current. And then we landed and up at a place of, it really requires an element of trust between the students and the faculty. So how can, we want your input, we want your voice and choice, but not there. It can't be the message. So once we get that feedback and that information, how do we apply it? How do we follow through on it and show that they've been heard and really use it to affect change? Any other big points from the group that I missed? Anyone want to add something?
I would just add what we ended on, which is also just making sure it's really hard in the content, but to make sure that you do have legitimate options for choice in the content that you're delivering, and that students can choose perhaps the path they're taking through the content, or the assignments they're doing at the very least, that is going to be something that sparks their interest, rather than, oh, I've just got to do the same thing that has been the same assignment that's been given for the last 20 years in this class.
Beautiful conversations. I love that. I know all these topics kind of intertwine. When you start talking about one thing, it goes into the other. That was kind of on purpose. Everything comes together, and it's a whole effort in a classroom to do that, like student voice. So Tom, I think you're the last of our leaders for the moment. Would you like to share what your group went over?
Sorry. Probably for the best in case my dog starts barking. No, I was just going over the sheet and see what people wrote. Unfortunately, I don't type and talk well at the same time. My brain doesn't work that way. Or listen, actually, let me rephrase that. Necessarily listen as well. So I would welcome anybody else from the group to chime in if they have any thoughts that I'm missing. You know, sort of general ideas was this issue of this tension between motivation and the overall systems, and how, in terms of power, empowerment of our students. If you want to create activities within your classes that empower students, were several people there who taught at a community college or even at ASU, who have a lot of students who aren't used to being empowered, and they only do things because they're told to, and the only way you can tell them to do stuff is by giving them some sort of incentive, like a grade, that's can be very disempowering, right? And so that tension between what do we want out of a university? You know, what do we consider to be successful as a university? People navigating the system and completing, or deep learning and actual understanding of the world around them. And those things are fundamentally in tension. Also, that many of us are not like our students, because we derive our learning internally, and grades were always something that was sort of in the background that we, dealt with, but never really was a focus for our lives and our learning lives. That's not true for most of the students. They're trying to punch their ticket through the system. So that's a real challenge when it comes to individual activities within the class, and how do you do that without bribing them, for instance. There were a number of other comments as well, and there's some good stuff. As I said, I haven't had a chance to read through what everybody wrote in the document. There's some good stuff in there, I can tell already. So I encourage everyone to A, keep writing on it, and B, read it. So.
I love it. I love it. And did anybody else from Tom's group wanted to add anything? Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, we'll keep going. Thank you, Tom. That was an awesome summary. I know, definitely. I know the topic of, I guess, I don't want to call them difficult students, but minimum students, maybe call them that, of just doing the minimum requirements and moving on is definitely a part. And Tom was even saying right before we met, there's the superstars, and those students are awesome to work with. I mean, everybody wants the easy student that's a superstar. You want your students to be engaged, but it's also the challenge of how do we get those students that are having a harder time engaging, involved, and how do we make sure that they know their value and that trust, just like Allison brought up. I mean, the trust with your students is so essential. And I had some teachers where I didn't trust them because they sold their own textbook to me, and I was very jaded by that. And I will openly share that, because I understand that there's a lot of work that goes into the textbook, but with me in open education, I was like, why can't we just share the materials and be open with it? It was frustrating. But anyhow, we have one more speaker for our Choose Your Own Adventure. I did not know who our fearless leader was, but it was Megan. So Megan, tell us about our venture.
Heyo. Yeah, so we talked about kind of like how do these topics roll up? So if we're looking at, how we go through, we look at how, thank you, how we look through the, and I'm sorry, my dog is having bad dreams right now, so he's very whiny. But we look at how, okay, so if we do feedback at the end of every course, and we say, okay, which module was your least favorite? And then inform that, when we move forward into the next course, completely redoing that module and just kind of working on this one module at a time until, over time you end up with a whole new course really informed by what worked for the students. How do we roll that up? How do we say, okay, whether it's looking for feedback from students, feedback from hiring managers, CEOs and leaders in the community, to say, okay, what are we missing when we graduate as, MBA candidates, when we graduate with our undergrads, when we graduate as future instructors, what are we walking into the workplace not having? Because that is what we're having to teach ourselves That's what if you're working for a good company, I work for a really good company. If you work for a good company, you do have, they're coming out and saying like, okay, let's talk about being anti-racist in the workplace. Let's talk about how we are inclusive. And those things are not necessarily built into the curricula that we are seeing, especially at the MBA level. This is something I went into a little bit of a rabbit hole on the other day. But it's, it's super important that, we're looking at, getting that feedback. But the kind of roadblock in a lot of ways can be, we're here in this room because we've self-selected to be here because we care a lot. And, whether we are instructors or students, we care a lot. We care enough to show up and talk and give our feedback. How do we reach the students who care, but maybe have been disaffected, or maybe have been kind of like, well, it doesn't matter what I say. I'm going to fill out this survey and nobody's going to do anything. And why does it matter? So how do we get back to that student and say like, hey, we hear you, we see you, we're going to add on an elective in, DEI topics. We're going to add on an elective in maybe a, some sort of like interdisciplinary thing. Like, when you've got high level director, VP level leaders who have never read Maya Angelou, we need to have a conversation. These are the sorts of things that maybe we do need to listen to the student and say like, okay, not only how does this affect what we're teaching every day at the course level, but how are we really using that to inform the courses that we offer generally.
You hit on a ton of points there. Holy cow, that was awesome. But I think the thing that resonated with me most personally was just the idea of too, like, why aren't we having conversations about the external world all the times in the classroom? Like making sure that students understand that their choice and their like participating and just thinking through these critical thinking processes, especially like with all the different hot topics today. I don't even need to list them. We all know what we're talking about. How do we get students to understand the value in those and apply that to the classroom and understand that the value they make in those decisions is also the value they make in their career paths, in the classroom, and learning the different traits that can apply to the job. I definitely had that experience too, where I did my degree. It was great. Nothing like my job. It's like, we don't work on communication skills. We don't work on bringing up hard topics professionally. We don't work on, there's a lot of different topics where I think education paths should be like geared with and should be included on. So really great stuff. I can't even summarize all that, but it was great. Thank you, Reagan. Okay. So anybody have any more inputs before we wrap up? I know we're at the last minute.
Yeah.
But yes.
Oh, I was just going to say thanks again for everyone who joined today. And Laura, if you want to jump in here too, but this is the beginning. What we're planning to do is look at this. Please add your ideas and comments over the next 3 days. Then we're going to take it and edit it and have something back out so you can look at it and add anything else you want to. And then with the goal of creating a one-pager in about a couple of weeks. So we're really looking for you to continue to collaborate. And also, Laura, if you want to talk about what's coming up with ShapingEDU.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Trevor said, keep working in this document. If you want to get more involved in the Student Voices project, you can join the project team there. We've got an exciting series about the intersection of the tools we use and the teaching we do and the learning we do. Hasn't been announced yet, but it will this week. So stay tuned for that. And then of course, we have our unconference this July 20 through 23rd, where we'll be really digging in and tackling some of the wicked problems, these highly complex problems that require a lot of negotiation between competing values and tensions. So I hope you'll join us there. And with that, I think we're at time. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope to see you in ShapingEDU land very soon.